Hi, my name is Mathilde Petria, and I'm the Chief Customer Officer here at GRESB. Welcome to this session, Understanding the GRESB Benchmark, a guide for investors. Let's start from the beginning. What is GRESB? GRESB was created to be a tool that sits in between institutional investors on one hand and portfolio and asset managers on the other hand. We aim to provide transparent and standardized ESG data to institutional investors to better inform their own investment decisions. GRESB was created 15 years ago this year in 2024. It started small and it grew very quickly. Every year, the participation in real estate, but also now in infrastructure, has been growing. We started with 3 original investor members, APG, PGGM, and USS, and today we have more than 150 investors worldwide that consume GRESB data and support the GRESB movement. In 2024, if we focus on the real estate benchmark, we now cover 15 sectors with more than 2,000 funds participating. We collect data in total for more than 200,000 assets worldwide. We are present in 80 markets around the world, and we represent a value of more than $7 trillion of gross asset value. GRESB is governed by a GRESB Foundation. The GRESB Foundation is a non-profit association where volunteers gather and brainstorm and decide what is meaningful for sustainability in real assets, which questions should enter the GRESB assessment, how should that be scored. This is something that those volunteers in the GRESB Foundation decide every year. On this slide, you can see who is part of the GRESB Foundation boards with 9 investor members. We are really thankful for their hard work and commitment to sustainability in real assets. And we at GRESB, the operating company, take their guidance and their decision to then implement it in the GRESB assessment. The foundation every year gathers and decides how the benchmark should evolve, meaning the benchmark is really changing every year. There are changes in the indicators, in the metrics, in the weights, and therefore it is very important to note that year-over-year changes are here to raise the bar, but also lead to some challenges in the comparability of GRESB ratings year-over-year. So, how does GRESB scores and rating work? We observe that most of the investors focus on the entity's GRESB score and star rating only. Therefore, we think it might be helpful to briefly explain how they are constructed and how to go deeper. In the standing investment benchmark of GRESB real estate, for example, GRESB score is out of 100 points. And this score is obtained from the management component and the performance component. 30% is allocated to the management component, while 70% is allocated to the performance component. And then the star rating is assigned based on the entity's score and position within the whole GRESB universe. Entities in the top quintile will receive 5-star rating, while those in the bottom quintile will get a 1-star rating. Please note that the quintile cutoff are subject to change every year. So what is the composition of the GRESB assessments? As I just mentioned, there are 2 main components, the management component on 30 points and the performance component on 70 points. In the management component, fund managers typically answer questions about their leadership practices, their risk management, their reporting, but also which policies do they have in place and how they engage with their stakeholders. In the performance component, we dive into aspects of risk assessments, energy, waste, GSG, targets, but we also ask questions about building certifications, tenant and community, water, and data monitoring. As mentioned, due to methodological changes every year, the investors are advised not just to focus on GRESB score and star rating. The readers of the GRESB benchmarks can rely on other sections in the benchmark report to draw meaningful insights. First, the peer group ranking. GRESB defines peer group for each entity for them to better contextualize the content of the benchmark report. The predefined peer group is composed of entities with similar characteristics. This will give the reader a better idea on how the entities perform. Note that this year, we also displayed the ranking of the entities in their customized peer group if they have opted for this functionality. Secondly, readers can also look at the score breakdown among each of the E, S, and G pillars to see how the entity perform in each of the respective area. Thirdly, our GRESB model offers some insight in how the entities are positioned compared to the whole GRESB universe, and this dashboard is interactive in the GRESB portal. Readers are advised to dive into the individual aspects and metrics to better identify the entity's strengths and weaknesses. You can first always refer to the spider graph for an overview about the entity's performance against the benchmark average in each aspect to identify its major strengths and weaknesses. Then you may also look at the portfolio impact section, where we provide aggregated metrics at the fund level for certain key performance metrics such as energy, GHG, water, and waste. When calculating the GRESB score, it is very important to note that not all indicators are statically scored. What do we mean by that? By static scoring, we mean that the assigned points are solely based on the entity's response and performance. A few indicators in the performance component, which are listed here, are subject to dynamic scoring. This means that points are not assigned based on how well the entities are doing, but also its performance relative to the benchmark. In other words, the entity might have a relatively high data coverage, let's say of 80%, but if this entity's benchmark group average is 90%, it will prevent this entity from scoring full points for data coverage. This year, in 2024, it was very special, considering that the foundation really wanted to raise the bar in terms of the GRESB standards, increase differentiation between participants, and prioritize material real-world outcome. They also wanted to reduce the reporting burden and improve the quality of the benchmark. We translated that in the GRESB 2024 methodology. Mainly what we did was a shift from scoring at the fund level to scoring at the asset level. We also started to score and collect new information, such as the building certification age. We introduced new methodology to benchmark performance, mainly a shift from regional scoring to country scoring. What does that mean specifically? Well, let's take an example. If a fund was based in the United States of America, its assets performance was previously scored against the benchmark of the whole Americas region. Now, this year, we are scoring this fund based on comparison to the United States of America benchmark. We believe this benchmark is much stronger and also more fairer and more consistent approach. So how to interpret the 2024 GRESB results? What we see is that overall, statistically, the average GRESB score remains stable. However, we see that from one entity to another, this can vary a lot, based on the region they're in, based on the size of their portfolio, based on their asset class. It's important that investors have in mind that the changes this year reflect both new data inputted from the entities, but also those methodological changes. Consequently, the year-over-year changes are not necessarily directly comparable this year. This is why we encourage investors to look at specific sections in the assessments and to compare individual indicators metrics with a nuanced view of what are the relative strengths and weaknesses of an entity. Because investors should not expect year-over-year scores increases as a default, it's important to understand how to engage with your fund managers and which kind of questions to ask. Score increases will be harder to achieve, and improvements in practice and performance will require to keep up with more rigorous requirements. Investors should recognize that score decreases may be driven in part by those methodological changes, despite significant actions by participants. And therefore, instead of asking about the GRESB score only, try asking about their ranking. Investors can use GRESB numerical ranking to understand relative markets' position among peers. For example, ask about the ranking among US industrial companies. Rankings can be a useful starting point to determine strategies and areas for improvement and focus. Due to the changes this year, investors should not focus on the points obtained by an entity in each aspect. For example, instead of only looking at the points they achieved in GHG aspects, which is affected by the changes, try asking them about if they have a net zero target. This will help investors to better understand what efforts have been on the way when it comes to decarbonization. Note that starting from 2024, we have also started scoring the existence of net zero targets. Finally, investors are also encouraged to look into the percentage of benchmark group of the right-hand side of each indicator. This allows investors to see whether the entity is making the selection and how they position compare to similar entities. The changes to the 2025 assessments have already been made available on our websites. The summary table provides an overview of the changes, and details can be found in the GRESB Real Estate Standard 2025 updates shown on the right-hand side. The reference guide and the scoring documents for next year's assessment will be released early 2025. On this slide, you can have a sneak peek at already what to expect in the 2025 real estate standards as driven by the GRESB Foundation. There will be a new recognition of topics such as energy efficiency and residential specificities. We will start to collect data to support future criteria, such as for renewable energy and building certification. We will start to test and evaluate new criteria, such as embodied carbon and biodiversity. And finally, we aim to streamline some of the reporting aspects, such as employee safety. This is the end of this session. I hope it was useful. Thank you very much for attending.